We stood there, frozen, not touching, but the air thrummed between us like a live wire. Silence hung heavy, thick with all the things we weren't saying, all the unspoken deals our hearts were making in the hush of that moment. Later, the city lights started to prick the darkening sky as we sat on the fire escape, the usual city roar a low hum beneath us. I turned to him, the question barely a breath. What if we just disappeared? Mark's gaze met mine, the neon signs reflecting in the deep pools of his eyes, searching, questioning. Disappeared where, Sarah? He asked it softly, like he already knew the answer and was just waiting for me to say it out loud. From here. I gestured vaguely at the brick buildings, the distant sirens, the whole concrete jungle that had become our cage. This city, this life, everything. The words tumbled out, faster now, gaining momentum. What if we just vanished, started over somewhere new? A slow smile, hesitant at first, then widening, lit up his face. He reached for my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine, a familiar comfort in the urban chill. If that's what you want, then let's do it. His voice was low, steady, a promise whispered against the city's constant noise. Anywhere. We can go anywhere you want. Tears welled up, blurring the city lights into shimmering streaks. I nodded, the weight of the decision pressing down. A thrilling terror, a dizzying freedom, all mixed together. Okay, I whispered, the word barely audible above the traffic below. As the first stars began to punch through the twilight haze, I leaned into Mark, the warmth of his side a solid anchor in the swirling uncertainty. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't just going through the motions. I was stepping off the edge, into the unknown, not with dread, but with a fragile, flickering hope. The path ahead was shrouded in mist, I knew that much. It wouldn't be easy. But with him beside me, his hand strong in mine, I felt a surge of something I hadn't felt in years. The crazy, exhilarating belief that maybe, just maybe, we could actually pull this off. Maybe we could really fly. We had been stuck in this rut for so long, the days bleeding into weeks, weeks into months. A monotonous cycle of work, rent, repeat. New York, the city of dreams, had become our gilded cage. We'd arrived wide-eyed, full of ambition, ready to conquer the world. Instead, the world had worn us down, chipped away at our edges, leaving us numb. Mark worked grueling hours at a soulless corporate law firm, his passion for justice slowly suffocating under piles of paperwork and billable hours. And me? I was a graphic designer, once bursting with creativity, now churning out endless variations of corporate logos, my artistic spark reduced to bland, committee-approved mediocrity. Our tiny apartment in Brooklyn, once a symbol of our independence, now felt like a pressure cooker. The constant noise, the relentless pace, the sheer overwhelmingness of it all. It was crushing us. We'd stopped talking, really talking. Dinners were silent affairs, punctuated by the clatter of cutlery and the blare of the TV. Our weekends were spent collapsing on the couch, scrolling through social media, pretending to be connected while drifting further apart. Then, a few weeks ago, my grandmother, Nana Rose, had passed away. She'd lived in a small town upstate, a place I hadn't visited in years. Going back for the funeral felt like stepping into another world. Quiet streets, friendly faces, the smell of pine trees and damp earth. It was a stark contrast to the concrete and exhaust fumes of the city, and in the quiet solitude of Nana Rose's old house, surrounded by her memories, I'd had a revelation. This wasn't living. This was just existing. The funeral had forced me to confront a truth I'd been burying deep down. I was suffocating. The city, the job, the whole damn thing was slowly killing me, and I knew, deep in my gut, that Mark was feeling it too. We were both just too afraid to say it, too afraid to admit that the dream had turned into a nightmare. Back in the city, the feeling intensified. The noise was louder, the crowds denser, the air thicker with a suffocating sense of urgency that wasn't our own. I started having panic attacks, sharp, sudden stabs of anxiety that would leave me breathless and trembling. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, the city lights painting shadows on the walls, and wonder, was this it? Was this all there was? Then, one evening, after another soul-crushing day at work, I came home to find Mark sitting on the fire escape, staring out at the city. He looked lost, defeated, and in that moment, something snapped in me. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I had to say something, anything. So I joined him on the fire escape, the cool night air a welcome relief against my overheated skin. We sat in silence for a long time, the city humming around us, a symphony of despair. And then, Finally, I spoke. What if we just disappeared? And now, here we were, the question hanging in the air, no longer just a desperate fantasy, but a real, tangible possibility. Mark's hand in mine was warm, solid, reassuring. But his eyes? They held a flicker of something else. Fear? Excitement? Maybe both. Where would we go? He asked, his voice thoughtful. I don't know, I admitted, the vastness of the unknown suddenly dawning on me. Anywhere. Somewhere quieter, somewhere with trees, somewhere we can breathe. He squeezed my hand. Upstate? He suggested, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. Like where your Nana Rose lived? A wave of nostalgia washed over me. Nana Rose's town. It was the opposite of everything New York was. Slow, peaceful, connected to nature. Could we really go back to that? Could we trade the chaotic energy of the city for the quiet serenity of the countryside? Maybe, I said slowly, the idea taking root, growing stronger with each passing second. Or maybe further, somewhere completely different. Out west, maybe? The mountains? The desert? Mark's eyes widened slightly, a spark of adventure igniting within them. The desert? He repeated, a hint of wonder in his voice. Like Arizona? New Mexico? Yeah, I said, my voice gaining confidence. Imagine. Wide open spaces, clear skies, mountains in the distance. He was silent for a moment, considering. Then he turned to me, his eyes shining with a newfound intensity. Okay, he said, his voice firm. Let's do it. Let's get the hell out of here. A rush of adrenaline surged through me, chasing away the fear, replacing it with a giddy excitement. We were actually going to do this. We were going to leave everything behind and start over. It was crazy, it was terrifying, and it was exactly what we needed. When? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Soon, he said, his grip tightening on my hand. As soon as possible, we'll figure it out. We'll sell everything, quit our jobs, pack our bags, and just go? I finished, the words hanging in the air, a question and a statement all at once. And just go, he confirmed, his smile widening, a real, genuine smile that reached his eyes, a smile I hadn't seen in months. We sat there on the fire escape, the city lights twinkling around us, no longer feeling like a cage, but like a backdrop to our escape. The silence between us now was different, no longer heavy with unspoken anxieties, but buzzing with a shared sense of purpose, a thrilling anticipation of the unknown. The promises were still unspoken, but they were there, shimmering in the night air, promises of a new beginning, a fresh start, a chance to finally breathe again. We spent the next few weeks in a whirlwind of activity. The initial excitement gave way to the daunting reality of actually dismantling our lives. Selling our furniture, packing boxes, dealing with landlords, quitting our jobs. It was a logistical nightmare. There were moments of panic, moments of doubt, moments when we almost gave up, when the enormity of what we were doing threatened to overwhelm us. But every time we faltered, we would look at each other, remember that night on the fire escape, remember the feeling of hope, the promise of something better, and we would push through. Mark surprised me with his newfound energy. He tackled the logistics with a focus and determination I hadn't seen in him since, well, maybe ever. He negotiated with the landlord, sold our furniture online, handled the paperwork for quitting his job, all with a quiet efficiency that both impressed and slightly intimidated me. It was like a switch had been flipped, and the weary, defeated Mark had been replaced by someone else. Someone stronger, more decisive, more alive. I, on the other hand, was a mess of emotions. One minute I was filled with exhilaration, imagining our new life, the wide open spaces, the freedom. The next minute I was paralyzed by fear, terrified of leaving everything familiar behind, of stepping into the void. There were days I wanted to pack it all in, to tell Mark I'd changed my mind, that maybe New York wasn't so bad after all, that maybe we should just stay, just cope. But then I would remember Nana Rose, her quiet strength, her unwavering spirit, and I would remember the feeling of suffocation, the panic attacks, the soul-crushing monotony of our city life, and I would take a deep breath and keep packing. We decided on Santa Fe, New Mexico. It was a compromise, not too remote, not too isolated, but far enough away from the city madness to feel like a real escape. We'd both always been drawn to the desert landscape, the stark beauty, the vibrant colors, the sense of ancient history. And Santa Fe, with its art scene, its adobe architecture, its laid-back vibe, seemed like the perfect place to start over. We sold almost everything we owned, packed our lives into suitcases and boxes, leaving behind the ghosts of our old selves in the empty apartment. The last night in New York was surreal. We sat on the fire escape again, the city lights twinkling below, but this time the silence was different. It was a silence of completion, of anticipation, of a chapter closed and a new one about to begin. We didn't say much. We didn't need to. We held hands, watched the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and orange, and waited for the cab that would take us to the airport. As we drove away, leaving Brooklyn behind, I looked back one last time at the city skyline, a jagged silhouette against the dawn. It wasn't with sadness or regret, but with a strange sense of detachment, like watching a movie end, knowing it was time for the credits to roll. The flight to Albuquerque was long and bumpy. We were both exhausted, emotionally and physically drained. But as the plane descended and the landscape outside the window transformed from endless clouds to a vast expanse of desert, dotted with mesas and canyons, a sense of calm settled over me. This was it. This was the start of something new. We rented a small adobe casita on the outskirts of Santa Fe. It was simple, rustic, but filled with character. Thick adobe walls, a kiva fireplace, a courtyard with a gnarled juniper tree. It was nothing like our cramped city apartment. It was peaceful, quiet, real. The first few weeks were a blur of unpacking, exploring, getting our bearings. We spent our days wandering the historic plaza, browsing art galleries, hiking in the nearby mountains, soaking up the desert sun. The air was clean, crisp, thin. The silence was profound, broken only by the chirping of birds and the rustling of wind through the juniper trees. It wasn't always easy. There were moments of disorientation, of loneliness, of missing the familiar chaos of the city. We had no jobs, no friends, no routines. We were completely adrift, floating in a sea of uncertainty. But slowly, gradually, we started to find our footing. Mark, surprisingly, thrived in the quiet. He started writing again, something he hadn't done in years. He set up a small studio in the casita and began to paint, landscapes inspired by the desert scenery. He was like a different person, calmer, more centered, more himself. I started freelancing again, picking up design projects online. The pressure was off, the deadlines less frantic. I rediscovered my creativity, my passion for art. The desert light, the vibrant colors, the ancient culture, it all sparked something within me. I felt inspired. We started meeting people slowly, organically. Artists, writers, musicians, people who had also chosen to escape the city and find a different kind of life. We joined a hiking group, went to local farmers markets, volunteered at an animal shelter. We were building a new community, brick by brick, connection by connection. One evening, months after we arrived, we were sitting on the porch of our casita, watching the sunset paint the mountains in fiery hues of orange and purple. The air was cool, fragrant with the scent of sagebrush and piñón. Silence settled between us, a comfortable, companionable silence. I turned to Mark, his face softened by the golden light. "Remember that night on the fire escape?" I asked softly. He smiled, a slow, knowing smile. How could I forget? "We did it," I said, a sense of wonder filling my voice. "We actually did it. We disappeared." He reached for my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine, just like that night. "And we found ourselves," he said, his eyes meeting mine, filled with a love that was deeper, stronger, more real than ever before. Tears welled up in my eyes, not tears of fear or uncertainty, but tears of gratitude, of relief, of pure, unadulterated joy. We had taken a leap of faith, a terrifying, exhilarating leap into the unknown, and we had landed, not on solid ground, but on something even better, on hope, on possibility, on a life that was finally, truly our own. The desert stretched out before us, vast and limitless, a canvas of endless possibilities. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like anything was possible. We were home. We were free. We were finally, truly alive.